This is our first meetup on content management in Sri Lanka. So I welcome all of you for the inaugural meetup. We have a very number of exciting topics today with well-distinguished speakers. So it's going to be a very interesting time and hopefully a lot of learning. So first, some house rules: please turn off your cell phones to silent or vibrate, please. We don't want additional sound effects to the presentations. Second, if anybody wants to use the restroom, it's down the corridor at the back. Okay, so we'll get on with the schedule. First, so I'll introduce the first speaker. As we have, as more and more teams go into the global delivery model, handling multicultural, multi-geography teams has become even more challenging and even more relevant these days. And we have the head of delivery from Xizi, Martin Havison, who's here from UK. He's going to talk about on the topic of delivering on global teams. A little bit of background on Martin. He's worked in a variety of challenging, complex projects, delivering in the global model. He also has experience at the BB's, the British Broadcasting Corporation, the Royal Bank of Scotland, and various national and government bodies in the UK. So today, as the head of delivery of Xizi, he's going to talk about what are the challenges and how to effectively deliver using a global model. So we welcome Martin, please.
Anne said that I'm going to be talking today about global team development and excellence in delivering projects. Projects is what I've been involved in over the last 20 years. So just the first thing on the head of delivery, so what's the Xizi delivery function? We service government. We're a global business servicing government, UK universities, and the global financial service companies. And so we're touching every part of the globe, either by the clients, the customers that we have, or indeed some of their offices that we work with directly. And in order to achieve that, the Xizi delivery function, we have offices in London, Seville in Spain, and here in Colombo. And it means that we have those sort of challenges. How do we integrate teams, and how do we make sure that our teams are working together and that we're providing the excellence that we want to as a business? And we also have the delivery functions projects, but also support. And so we provide 365, 24/7 support. So that in itself has sort of challenges in terms of geography and time zones and all those sort of things that would affect business in that case. Our primary focus, though, is every office is a centre of excellence. And so that is one of our objectives for all of our teams and all of the people that work for us. And I think it's important for any organisation that's moving forward in the global environment that we're now working in. So what is a global team? In Xizi, it means that every location is represented by at least 2 people. So we pair people up so that then you have the person next to you. You have somebody that you can talk to, that you can be talking to about on the same project. All our teams are multi-skilled. We don't silo our teams. So you'll have project managers that have engineers and senior engineers and architects and junior engineers, for instance. The business analysts, project managers, and the QAs are all in the team. You probably recognise that from an agile view of how project teams are created at the moment. But we manage that all the way through all of our teams. And so that means that we have a diverse skills profile. And that's because we have expertise in different locations. And so one of the things, the challenges for a global organisation is how do you get those skills from all the diverse locations and make sure you get to the value of your company and the business. We don't silo people and projects and clients, we create diversity. And so that means that people get to see different technologies, different ways of working, and particularly with clients, because they can have different ways that they work. And we also involve R&D projects. We as a business see R&D as a big part of what we deliver, but it's also for the individual is a place where they can grow and see new technologies and be part of the new technologies as they establish. So the next question is, why have global teams? The onshore-offshore model, as far as I'm concerned and as far as IT is concerned, just doesn't work for a business like us, one that's fast-moving and dynamic. And so we don't go for the onshore-offshore, and then we push certain projects offshore, we push certain projects onshore. It doesn't work, and it doesn't work for us, because it doesn't give us what we need. And so what we go for is a global team structure. And that's because we want to get the most out of all of our people. And so where the talents are, we want to bring them in the team. And it also, by creating global teams across boundaries and locations, you get ownership of projects, you get ownership of clients because people are working together. And that means you get a stronger belief in terms of delivery and how you treat and deal with your customers. So what are the opportunities of global teams? The first one, which I think is almost the most important one, is location's not a barrier to personal development. So that somebody within a global team can move to other teams if they need to, that can fill the resource, and it doesn't matter where you are located because that resource can be used. Skills transfer is important because there are skills knowledge centres. For instance, one of our technologies is Alfresco, and that technology centre historically was in Spain because there was a lot of public service usage of Alfresco. And so it's now our strength by building global teams as we push that around the globe to the other offices, because that skills transfer is allowed to happen because they're working on the same projects. Standards is an important thing for anybody. It means that we're all working to the same delivery, the same method, the same techniques, and that's what's important for delivering to customers. Mentoring is another part. That comes to the skills transfer as well, because when you have got different people that they're communicating on a daily basis across regions, it means that you can share information and you can help people more effectively because you're building relationships all the time. And that creates that environment for growth. And because it gives people opportunity, it gives people opportunity to new exposure, new experience, new skills. And the diversity of the projects is good because it means that we have an opportunity to broaden everybody's experience and skills. And then as a business, effectively the first few are about people, and people are the important part of any team. But from a business perspective, then it's also fostering a sense of shared ownership because people are working together. And also, as a resource, managing resources across the globe and having projects dropping in and out and all those sort of things that clients often do, it gives us greater flexibility to resource projects. So we can have a project where we can drop resources in from a team from anywhere in the globe. And that, to me, is a real opportunity and a real benefit for everybody. So, driving excellence, which is the other part of what we're talking about on this piece, is quality, quality, and more quality. Guy mentioned I worked at the BBC. I was there for a long time, and the one thing that came out of the BBC is the quality in the production values. Top Gear, Doctor Who, Blue Planet, all those sort of programs. If you watch them, you know their quality, and that's because people believed in the quality that they were delivering. That's the most important thing. And so that's where pride comes. Pride comes in what you deliver, and it's considering the customer's perspective as well. So it's not just about a great technology solution. Does it satisfy the customer's requirement? Because that's where the quality comes from, because that's how they judge the quality. the interesting one, and I always find this one interesting, is colleagues are customers too. So it's not always the end line, the end customer, it's what you pass on to your colleague, because they're the ones that maybe have to pick up the next bit. So testing, the documentation, those sort of things. In a project life cycle, there are customers, internal customers all the way along, and you should see them and make sure that as you pass things over, it's done with a sense of pride. And the final one, quality is about consistency every time. And that's where people can start to respect what you do as a business and what you provide as a supplier, for instance, but also how you work with each other and the fact that they know what they're going to get. And that's where you get referrals, that's where you get interest from other potential prospects and clients, because they have got a perception that they're going to get quality every time. Collaboration is a big part of global teams. It's the most important part because it's about conversation, it's about dialogue. And so, as a business, we have to provide communication tools. We've got to be able to facilitate that collaboration. We have daily stand-ups, so it means that people have opportunities to talk. We deal with the time zone differences, so we have to make sure it's acceptable for everybody so that you're not enforcing one team to be working outside of their normal hours. It's the sort of respect that you have to have. We hold global training events so that we will have what's called a brown bag session where you bring your lunch and you sit down, and we will time it so everybody can join in. And that's something that we try and do, because then you get consistent standard and consistent knowledge all the way through. You have to create a format and an environment so people can share ideas and information. So the wiki style approach or Confluence, depends which technologies you use. And extend the working circle is what I call it, because quite often you can be in projects or you can be in teams, but we also encourage through R&D the opportunity for people to extend into other areas so that they can collaborate with other individuals. It just means that you share experiences with different people, and then every time you interact with somebody else, you should be learning something. And best practice. Best practice is a key thing for a business, for instance, like Zyzy, where we have lots of different clients. We have transfer of technology from one client to another because of the way we're dealing with. So you have to have best practices. So first of all, define them. So develop methodologies and tools, etc., or your QA process. And business readiness, how you make sure that it's fit for purpose for the client. Define your best practice. Then you need to train them and train everybody so that they know what your best practices are. Follow the best practice. That's in some ways the hard bit, is following it, especially when projects are under pressure or when you've got a demand for delivery. But the key thing, and this is from a management perspective, is monitor the best practice. By monitoring it, you put it back into the loop and you improve your best practices. So that's the end of my slides. The key thing for me is global, with global teams and global delivery, is quality at the core of everything that you do. Collaboration is critical. Respect and ownership for everybody in your team. And if you get those three things correct, then your global teams will outstrip anything that you can do with onshore and offshore. Because I think that the reality is, in any business, what's at the core is the quality of the people. And so if you give everybody the opportunity to develop and grow, then a business gets it in return. Thank you very much.
So the one thing I forgot to tell you guys at the start is we are running this inaugural meetup in a lightning talk fashion. So the idea is to give you guys a variety of topics, keep this very broad, and we've even provided feedback forms, so we want to hear about what are the topics you all like to hear going forward. So please fill those in and hand them to the desk at the end of the event. Right. So next up we have Neeraj. He's Neeraj Migama. He's going to talk about Drupal, one of the popular CMS in the market today. The topic's all about, for those who are looking to start off a business, e-commerce platform, how do you do that very quickly and neatly with Drupal. So the Niraj, if you could please.
So let me first explain what I'm going to do today. I'll teach you just enough so that you can, just go home and install Drupal and just play around with it. And my objective here is actually to get you interested in Drupal, so that you'll be coming for future meetups as well. So Drupal, how many of you have heard about Drupal? Yeah, almost everyone. So the first question that would come to your mind is, what is Drupal? So Drupal, in my definition, is a flexible, powerful web-based CMS and a framework written in PHP. Why flexible? Because it has more than 1,000 modules contributed towards the code, and powerful because each module has plugins. All the powerful modules have plugins, so it's very scalable. There is nothing you can't do in Drupal. So, and via framework, it allows you to interfere with your code using a method called hooks, where you can interfere in between each level of flow. So, and it's written in PHP. So, anyone who knows the basic PHP syntax can go ahead and play around with it, right? So, next is the Drupal terminology. So if you want to start with Drupal, the major thing is the terminology, or in other words, the glossary. One of the common terms that comes up is a node. So what's a node in Drupal? A node in Drupal is actually it's your entity. It represents all the objects of your website. It might be a student record, it might be a book, it might be a product. So everything in Drupal is represented as a node. All your content will eventually come down to a node. So next is the content type. You guys heard of object-oriented programming, right? So Drupal does not follow OO concepts, but it has a structural method. But a content type is similar to a class, right? So it's actually a template of your node. Say it's a book, right? So you'll have an author, you'll have the title. You can define everything in your content type. So it's basically your template for your node, right? And next three terms, taxonomy, vocabulary, and terms. These are to further categorize your nodes or your content. Let's say you're selling cars on your website. So the same model of the car can have the automatic and the manual option, right? So what you do is you just create a vocabulary and add two terms, manual and automatic. So when you're adding your node, you can actually tell, okay, this is automatic car or this is a manual car. So that's with taxonomy. So going on to the next slide, the region. The region is a section of your page. It might be the footer, it might be the header, it might be the left sidebar. You can define your regions, you have your freedom, and the blocks. The connection between the region and the block is you'll always need a region to display a block. So a block will always have some content display. It may be your top 5 authors, fast selling products, latest added products, you name it. You can implement actually anything there. And next is the theme. This is a collection of files. This will actually define the look and feel of your site. So you can practically find loads of tutorials on how to do Drupal theming. Drupal theming is actually a separate subject. You'll find separate ebooks on Drupal theming. It's very interesting, so just look around. And next is the module. The modules are divided into two categories, the core and the contributed. and you also can say custom, where you write your own modules, right? So the core modules are a must in your program. They have to be installed for Drupal to run. Example, your node module, your views, your path module, some like that. And contributed modules are also where you can download contributed modules from Drupal.org, and you can just do a search, and you can. The specialty with modules is right when you're coding in Drupal, what you have to know is just first look for the module, right? And even if you don't have the exact module, just don't go into custom coding at once, right? Try to be smart enough to get together several modules and do what you can. Actually, if you find out, you break your task into small pieces, right? And just keep searching with those smaller tasks rather than going ahead with the big task and finding a Drupal module. And when you always look for a Drupal module, always state the Drupal version in the Google search bar. That will help you get more filtered results. Right. The module I'll be demonstrating today is called Bucket, and it's a very powerful module. It alone has a lot of plugins written around it, and you can actually writing plugins for Bucket is also easy because they have their own framework written inside the Bucket core. So it has everything from selling products, viewing your orders, managing your stores, showing featured items, comparing items. It has all the stuff built into it. So once you install Bucket, you will get almost all the features you need just to run a simple web store, right? So I'm going to do a demo now. What I'm going to do in my demo is I'm going to install Drupal, and while it's going on, I'm going to give you some quick tips on administration, and I'm going to show you how to install a module. Configuring Bucket, configuring in the sense I'm going to show you what kind of Bucket modules you'll need, because once you get the Bucket folder, you'll have a lot of sub modules inside it. You don't need to actually install all the modules for Bucket. And then configuring views and blocks. So start. Now unfortunately I don't have internet connection, so I'll be showing you just with the demo. So what you got to do is you got to download Drupal from Drupal.org. Just copy it into your folder, your www root. Here I'm using a virtual host. So once you just go into the installation, now first thing you need to know about when installing is you need to change your settings file, right? So you go to sites, default, and you will have the default settings file. You just copy it and paste, and then rename it to settings.php. And after that, you have to give permission to the default folder. Don't give it only to the settings folder. Give full permission to your default folder, right? So it's sites default, and then you will see these errors disappear, right? So then the database has to be built up first, because it does not build your database as well. And you can give just credentials for the database. Just fast forward this. And the next screen would be next screen would be the credentials for your user. First user. This is the most important user of Drupal, because you cannot give any permission against this user, right? So this user will have all the permissions. This is the user ID will be 1, and always remember to protect this user. Give it all the best password you can and just protect it. try not to log in with it. Try to always avoid logging in with it. I'm suggesting just add another user with all the permission, site administrator, and so that you can do all your coding in it. And once you give the information, your Drupal is installed, and your site will have a default theme installed. So that's your site. So I told you about content types. So there will be two default content types called article and basic page. So if you go, now you notice the clicks also, how many clicks I'm going through, because I'm giving you a tip on how to reduce the clicks. And these are the fields for the basic page or article type. One of the first things you got to do is you got to set your home page, right? So you do that by going into system and site information, and you specify your relative URL here of the node, right? So once everything is installed, once that's done, we can, I'll show you a install one later on. So next is the modules, right? When you are installing modules, what you got to do is you got to download your modules. Make sure you download the approved release version. You will see modules. When you go to the modules page, you'll have a bar in green, a bar in red. Just don't go for the red one, go for the green one, and that will be the relevant release. So to install your modules, you'll need to go to sites, all modules folder. That's where all the custom modules and the contributor modules should go to. Okay, you go to sites, all modules folder, paste your modules, and again refresh your modules page, right? And it will show all the modules that you put in there. So my tip for administrators, once you install Drupal, go ahead with administration menu and module filter. It will save you loads of time for development. Module filter, and as well as backup and migrate. So backup and migrate will back up your database, and you can schedule the backups. And I'll show you all the installed ones. I'll show you an installed version later. So this will be the administration menu. So in order, when you install the administration menu, make sure you remove the toolbar menu, because the toolbar is the default administration menu that comes up. And so when you install module filter, you can see that you can search modules easily, because your modules, there will be around 200 modules in a good site that comes up. So you just don't want to be scrolling down. You can just search here, and it will filter up all your modules. And for overcard, just install all the core modules and go for catalog, payment, production attributes, and reports for the optional core modules, and just install for payment, just install PayPal. So that's enough just to run a simple web store, right? Once that's done, it will give you two blocks. One is the shopping cart, and the next is the catalog. So the catalog will define the taxonomy for the products. It will categorize your products. So I'm going to put the catalog onto the left side, and the shopping cart onto this side. So I have also pre-created some content and a home page. So then your site will look like this: your shopping cart, and you'll have your catalogs. So when you can browse your catalogs, it will show the number of items that are there. So you can just go ahead. Your web store will be online, right? So it's that simple. But you can do a lot of customizing as well. So that will probably conclude my presentation for today, and hope I got you interested enough in Drupal. This is the Drupal store. So hope you come for the next meetups, and we'll do more on Drupal, right? So I'll teach you more on Drupal. Okay, right. Thank you.
So next, as all of us who are dealing with content management systems know, logging is a critical part of knowing your security. It's used a lot to understand especially when production support and teams have issues, they need to go through a variety of logs, different logs, especially in the cloud environment. Now you have clustered servers, you don't even know where to begin kind of thing, right? So Duminder, Economica is now going to come and talk to us about how to solve this problem using a log monitoring tool. Duminder.
So I will give an insight for this topic now. Normally in SIC, most of our systems are running on Amazon cloud. So customers expecting high availability on that system. So because of this, most of the systems we are deployed in a kind of like a distributed manner, like we have clusters. So when there's an issue, so we get normally logs from multiple clusters. So there's and it's very large also. So to pinpoint an issue or any event, it's very hard to go to the logs and find where the issue is coming in. So when we are looking into any solution for this, that we come up with, we understood that there were some open source tools that they have implemented, so we can use that. So I will give insight now why logging is important now. As I said, so most of the systems now come today, it's becoming more complex and complex. So more, and you might have the same experience that you are working with logs and logs becoming so bulky and it's becoming so large and you have to deal with multiple logs. And so when we find the good, features of a good log monitoring tool is that we need to provide kind of like a centralized server where we can send our logs to the kind of like a very same server, and we need to have the ability to search them immediately, given a term and the pinpoint where the issue is. And there's another advantage is when we use a log monitoring tool that we can produce alerts. So we can send alerts through SMS and we can send it through the email and yes, like that. And for the approach for this, actually this is the tool stack we have used. So we have used Log4j. Log4j is actually to ship the logs. Using appenders, we can ship the logs to the server, and the logstash is actually to manage logs. Logstash actually, to give insight about that, it will kind of like a centralized server where it will manage the logs, where it will take the logs and it will index them. So Elasticsearch is a kind of like a search engine where you can index and store, and you can search the logs inside it. It's not only logs, you can search documents. So Kibana is in order to search for the logs, we need a web interface. So Kibana does that. So I will put them all together. This will be on the client side. So on the client side, what it does is it's actually shipping the logs to the log management tool. So log management tool, what it does is because that data is coming as bulk, and most of that log messages are unstructured. They are passing that logs and they are making to a kind of like a structured model, and they will search and they will index it. So using a web interface, the end user can search after they have been indexed. So yes, this is in a more detailed manner, like actually we have deployed this on Alfresco server, and the Alfresco server will ship the logs into the logstash. Logstash will pass the unstructured data, and it will index that the logs into the Elasticsearch. So using the Kibana, user will be doing the search. So Kibana will pull the data from the Elasticsearch. So this is the settings for the Log4j. So when you are using the Log4j, you have to use the appender. I think most of you are familiar with the Log4j if you are using Java. So I think you have heard about the appender. So you have to you have to define the socket appender, and you have to give the remote host. This remote host will be the logstash server. And after that, yes. So this is the most important one. Logstash, what it does is it is actually collecting logs, and it is passing them and is storing them. So when you take the logstash, normally logstash config. Logstash have three type of you can install the configuration through plugins it has three main type of plugins. The first one is input. So if I speak about the input, what it does is it's actually the input. You can use the input to manage to extract the incoming log sources. So in case, for example, now here you can see the log4j type. So when I use the log4j type plugin, what it does is when I use in the append, as you saw in the previous slide, it will send the packet to the log stack. So this plugin, what it does is it will listen and it will extract the log messages. And other one is the filter. It's running on a phase manner. Like when you get into the input, you have the next phase is the filtering. So what does the filtering does is now all these logs what you are getting them as some very unstructured way. Most of the logs it's like very bulk logs. So you can define filters. Now I will give some example. There's one filter using called block. So what block does is you can define the semantic for the log. Say now you have a kind of like a log message with the kind of like if you're using system for so kind of like an invoicing MIA system. So you might be recording the invoice number. So you can give the request pattern for the invoice number and define the semantic for that log. So when it comes to this block, the filter, it will extract that value and you can define a field value for that. And it will save under that field. So to give kind of like the input what comes to here, it will come the bulk message. But when it is coming to, when it is coming out from the filter, it is coming a set of fields. So definitely it will include the source where the log is coming from, the message, and the next one is the priority level of the log, and any other fields that you can define. So all the other fields you can define through the filter. And the output what it does is output defines where you need to send these logs. So yes, either you can send that one as a debug. But in the most of the case, you need to store that logs. So whatever things coming through the filter, you need to store in the Elasticsearch. So what it does is like you have a set of fields. You are saving, you are indexing them inside the Elasticsearch. So to view a kind of like inside of the Elasticsearch. So Elasticsearch is kind of like it's built on Lucene. If you know about Lucene, it's a search. You can do. You can store documents, index documents, and you can search for any terms on them. So even you can define fields also. And the benefits of the Elasticsearch is it's actually schema free. Now, when you are working with Lucene, normally you have to define the schema first. It's like you are defining the database, similar like that. But here it's kind of like the fields. There are two kind of fields like static fields and dynamic fields. Dynamic fields mean you can change the schema. You don't need to define that. You can change the field type, runtime. So it's kind of like going with the dynamic fields with the schema free, and it's real-time data and analytics, and it stored the structured data, the data as structured JSON documents. And yes, now this is the web interface. Now what Kibana will do this is when you search for you have the log stash placed. You have the log4j log stash placed, and you have the Elasticsearch. So you have all the logs indexed in the Elasticsearch. So using Kibana, you can pull the search result, like you are searching like in the Google, through the Elasticsearch. So if you know Lucene, there are some special terms. Now even in Google also, you might have familiar with to make the search more optimized. You can use some kind of like terms. So likewise in the Lucene also, because Elasticsearch is implemented on Lucene, there are some special terms where you can use to optimize your search. So when you use them, you can get more specific results. So this is some of the screens of the Kibana. Now, actually, you can give the terms here, and you can define the time range. And what it will search for within this time range, whatever term it will give, it will search all the logs which matches to the term. And you can actually have many fields also. So, as I said, you can define the fields using the filters. So any field you define them, it will be coming under here. So you can use these fields over here, or you can use in this search term. You can search through these fields. Look at this. You can see there are some fields called at message, at source, at source host, at source path. So you can have your own fields as like that. And the thing is, one important thing is the graph. Now in the Kibana, it provides kind of like when you do a term search, it will give you the, a graph analysis at kind of like a timeline at which instances that it found that term. So this is very useful. So we will say now when you got a kind of like exception, you can see in a timeline at what point that exception has been occurred. So when you see this, when you see this peak, you can go to this peak. You can just take the mouse pointer to this peak, and it will be expanded. It will show all the logs inside that also. And the other one is in the Kibana is core and trends. So it's like this. Now when you search for a term, you can see the number of counts for that term for a specific time period. And you can see the trends. Now, if you want to make sure that exception, there was some exception in the system, but now you want to make sure that exception doesn't occur, the occurrence of the exception is kind of like reduced now. So using these trends, it's giving you the information. It will give the minus 10 or the plus 10 whether the situation is improving or it's reducing now. So that's the end of my slide. So these are the more information if you want to know about the system that we have used.
Right. So next we have Bhajeeya, who's going to talk about. So again, as content management systems, as content grows in the organization on the systems, visualizing them gives you additional productivity just other than the text search. So Bhajeeya is going to talk about how this can be achieved using some of the techniques he'll explain.
Hi, I'm Bhajeeya. So I'm going to talk to you about visualizing enterprise content repositories. So this is actually a modified version of the presentation I gave in last November. Outline, what I'm going to discuss is why visualization matters and how do you visualize content in repository. And I'm going to talk about an open source project that I'm working on. It's called First for Visualization Tools, and how it has implemented visualizations. And we're going to have a quick discussion on what's coming on visualization. So just curious, I hope that most of you are working with content repositories. Maybe unknowingly, for example, you might be using WordPress or Drupal for your personal sites, and someone might be using blog, right? Okay, a day in the life of a CMS. So your content management system is quite like a hive. It generates a lot. And the content is created, edited, and removed most of the time, many times a day. And considering the users, if it's a large-scale instance of your CMS that is running, for example, 6,000 plus users at once, users are generating and consuming content. And more content means that users are likely to forget where their content is. So what are the challenges that you would face when that can be solved by visualizing? For example, how do you find the largest files in a repository? For example, if I give you a hard disk and tell, okay, show me the biggest files in the hard disk, how are you going to show it? Right? How can you discover it? And the other thing is, how can I navigate to a file faster than the default breadcrumb or tree view navigation? Because a lot of systems provide this. And the other thing is, how can I discover the most important content? Because some of the content might be more relevant and might be hidden deep inside your repository. And how can I provide a context for my search or the navigation? So typical user stories that we want to looking at is that I identified a couple. So one is that as a user, I want to locate a document when I have forgotten where I stored it. So this is quite a commonplace problem, because no matter how well you define your structure for the content, users will always go and put the content somewhere else, and they'll come looking back for it. And the other thing is, as a user, I just want to know how my repository would look like. So pretty much simplified version. As a user, I don't know where I kept my files, but I want to find them. And as a user, I want to know what's interesting about my content. So, so how can we solve this? Is by going visual. So the other thing, why visualizing matters. Humans perceive faster when using visual guides. It may be faster for you to read, but to understand, it might be easier for you to look at a graphic and understand. And visualization also again provide a context for search and navigation. And for example, if you are looking at a set of files that has been colored according to the category, you might understand the file much faster than looking at a simple set of file names that is just in one color. So examples, how we can approach visualizations. One is a nested tree map. So this one is not nested, but this is something that we are building on the Alfresco visualization tools project. And you'll see that these individual blocks are being colored. So this can be any property. For example, if you're categorizing your content by different categories, you can allocate colors. And here's another one. It's called a circle packing diagram. Actually, this has already been implemented, and you can check out. It enables you to zoom in and zoom out from your content repository. It's actually pretty cool. And there's another one. It's based on the MIT's Simile project that we have implemented. It uses Alfresco's audit API. Speaking of the audit API, it records every user action that has been performed on Alfresco, and you can query on it. So what has been done is that the timeline queries the audit API to generate pretty much an interesting timeline of how the users have interacted with the content. So talking about the visualization tools project, the technologies were D3.js. D3 stands for data-driven document. So if you have not taken a look at it, and if you're a coder, just go and take a look at it. It's really interesting. And it enables bringing data to life using HTML, SVG, and CSS3. And it follows all web standards. And it's generally considered the best data-driven approach to DOM manipulation. The other thing is the Simile. This is a timeline visualization from MIT, and it's BSD licensed. Alfresco, being the largest open source enterprise content management system, did not have a project to visualize content. So this was until last November. So there was a hackathon organized by Alfresco, and what was presented was to start with D3 visualizations into Alfresco. And we started that, and you can find the project on GitHub. So I think the presentations will be made available after the event, so you can have a look at it. So that's pretty much it. So if you have any questions, I'll be available for the networking session. So please feel free to come and talk to me if you have any questions on Alfresco and LET, Alfresco visualization tools. Thank you very much.
So obviously having your corporate content at your fingertips at any point will allow you to get the job done. And as the rapid increase of tablets and smartphones in the workspace have exponentially increased, Bhajeeya is going to tell us all about how to tackle this using the mobile content management systems.
Hi everyone, I'm Harshini, and I'll be talking to you all today about mobile content management systems. The agenda for my presentation is going to be that I'll first start by giving you all an introduction to mobile content management systems, and then I'll be talking about advantages of using a mobile content management system, and then I'll be introducing you to an enterprise mobile content management system called Alfresco Mobile, and then finally I'll be giving a demonstration on Alfresco Mobile. So what is a mobile content management system? Just as the word says, it's a type of content management system capable of storing and delivering content and services to mobile devices. So, however, there are some key features that are specific to a mobile content management system. The first one being multi-channel content delivery. So, what is meant by multi-channel content delivery is that it will maintain a central repository while simultaneously delivering this content to different devices. So, these devices can include even the web browsers in the desktop plus the mobile devices. And the data is stored in a raw format to which the device-specific presentation styles can be then applied. And then moving on to specialized templating systems. So if you think of the traditional web-based content management systems, they only need to handle a few templating styles. So that will be for the different types of browsers. Whereas if you think of a mobile content management system, there are so many target devices to handle. So there are mainly two approaches being used for this. The first one being multi-client. So what is meant by multi-client is that this will be using a single domain for all versions of a site, and the templates are presented based on the device client. On the other hand, multi-site will display the mobile site on a targeted domain. And then this can even have location-based content delivery. That is, it can provide targeted content based on the current location of the user. So why do we need a mobile content management system? So the most advantage of using a mobile content management system is the accessibility. You have your vital corporate content at your fingertips. So wherever you go, you have the content, you have the access to it, you can get your business done. So this in turn helps to increase productivity. So the first thing that comes to your head when you think of a mobile content management system is, okay, you have this installed in your device and there's a central repository, you connect to it and you retrieve the data. So what if you don't have connection? This can even handle that. You can even download your important documents. You can even synchronize your documents. So when you don't have connection, you still have access to your content. And then collaboration. So it's not only viewing the data that you can do. So you can open it, edit it, and save it back into the mobile content management system. And you can even maintain version histories. And it even has like new social collaboration features where you can actually comment and like on your content. And security. So is our data going to be secure in this? Yes. Because all the data is going to be kept encrypted in the mobile device, and it will be only decrypted at the point of access. This can even handle workflows from the point you initiate a workflow to the point you complete it. So you can set up reviews, approve workflows, monitor the progress from anywhere. This even has integrations where you can open your content from your favorite application. Say you want to open a Word document, if you have Quick Office installed on your mobile device, you can open it using that. So then Alfresco Mobile. Alfresco Mobile is an enterprise-grade content management and business process automation tool. So this is available for both iOS and Android, smartphones as well as tablets. So now I'll be giving you all a demonstration on the iOS version of Alfresco Mobile. This is the code base. As you can see, it's very well structured and it's very easy to be modified because of its structure. So what you need to do first is, before you start using it, you need to go and set up your account here. You need to add your credentials and then add your server address. I'm using the local host for now, and then you need to add your port ID. Port number, and then from there you can start viewing. So when you go here, you can view all your sites from this location, and then from there you can view all your content. So now the default behavior here is it will have a scroll view that you can navigate through your document. And also, what I mentioned before, it can maintain history. So all the versions are there. Whatever version you want, you can download. And I mentioned about modifications. This is one of the modifications that was done. So the PDFs, you can actually have like a page where you can actually flip the pages of the document. Things like that can be easily incorporated. And even this was a feature that was incorporated where you can go to a specific page directly. And also you can add new content from the mobile device itself. So I'm creating a text pad here. Save, and you can also edit, like I mentioned before, you can edit all your content from the mobile device itself. And this was another feature that was incorporated, the search within a document. And then also I mentioned about synchronization. So now I synchronize it. So when I go to this tab, it shows the document that I just added to the synchronized list. And from there I can access it. So even if I don't have access to any kind of web connection, I can still use it. And then that's the open-in option that I mentioned about the integrations. If you have anything installed in your mobile device, you can open it using that. This is the downloads folder. By default, it has only one location, but here again we've incorporated a folder structure. So you can create folders and select the specific folder you want and download your documents. That was a document that we downloaded just now. You can also search all the documents and all your content in the central repository. It shows your recent activities and your workflows there. You can go there and review all of that. So with that, it comes to the end of our presentation.
Right, so next we have a talk on digital signatures. Again, as we know, the automated workflows, very often you're in a situation where your workflow is going, but you get stuck because people have to sign and it adds unnecessary delays which you can avoid. So Lakshika is going to tell us all about how digital signatures is going to help solve this particular problem.
Hi everyone, I'm Lakshika Paiva. I work as a business analyst at Zeiss Asia. I'll be talking about how digital signatures improve productivity with faster workflows in organizations. So to start off with, before digital signatures came into wide use in organizations, there was a research done with a number of organizations in the UK. So they actually had electronic workflows. So the main aim of the electronic workflows was to improve productivity in organizations and communication and also collaboration between employees. So what happened was the results of this research say that 41% needed signatures on more than half of their documents, whereas 65% took more than 1 day to collect signatures. That is like excess of time to just get a signature. So my idea is that although signatures was not an important part of a workflow, it actually, handwritten signatures actually reintroduced paper back into the workflow, where the cost-effective strategy of the paperless concept in organization was not realized. So what happened was the cost increased and additional time was taken in copying, scanning, and printing of documents, and approvals became slower. So after digital signatures were introduced into these organizations, more than 50% of these organizations said that they saved a lot of scanning and printing and copying time and a lot of cost of paper. And also 65% said that they sped up approval processes in their organization. So at the bottom line, 81% of these organizations reached their ROI, that is return on investment, in under 12 months. So that is like a very short period of time. So the main aim of digital signatures was with electronic workflows was to actually help organizations to realize the true benefit of the paperless concept within the organization's business process. So what are these digital signatures? So initially there was a thing called electronic signatures, which was the normal signature where you go and scan an image of your signature and you place it on a document. So that's like a graphical signature. That is easy to use and inexpensive, but then came server-side digital signatures, which were a much more mature standard. It had more document security and it was compliant with international regulatory standards in many countries. And also it's easy to use and implement, and it's inexpensive and had a low total cost of ownership. So I will illustrate server-side digital signatures using an actual solution that I have worked on. So it's called Alfresco Cosign. So Alfresco Cosign is a combination of two solutions that comes together in one software solution. So this is web-based. What Alfresco does is it gives the enterprise content management part. So you have, it's very inexpensive. So why Alfresco is because it's very inexpensive. It has document management, web content management, and built-in records management. And it's also certified by the US Department of Defense, which is not really provided by any other content management system in the market. So the cosign part gives the digital signatures, which is also a cloud application. So I need to highlight that you don't need extra software to actually get this solution into play. So it's also very easy to use and implement, and it's also secure because it's fully integrated with a lab. So these two solutions were smoothly integrated in a decoupled manner so that the functionality of one solution would not compromise the other. So what actually happens in Alfresco Cosign is when a user opens a document and clicks on the sign button, a document hash, also known as the fingerprint, is created. So this is unique to the document and the user who signs the document. And this is sent to the cosign server where the user is identified and the user's graphical signature. Their private and public keys are appended to the document. So the output is that you get a digitally and graphically signed document. So this has two parts where what you see from the external is the graphical signature, but what you don't see is a binary representation of the digital signature, which is also used in the validation of the signature. So how do you validate? How do you validate the signature on the document? So Alfresco Cosign, it's very easy. What you have to do is you just open the document and go and click on verify with cosign, and it gives you the proof of the 3 I's, which is the identification of the user as who signed the document, the intent of the user at the time of signing, and also the integrity of the document, which says that the document content has not been changed since the time of signing. So this validation shows that you can do it also on using Adobe Reader. So this is very useful for external users who don't have Alfresco Cosign, which are your external partners or business partners, your customers, and so on. So to give you, so how does Alfresco Cosine increase productivity in organizations is it's web-based. It's basically a cloud application which is integrated with Alfresco. So anyone can sign in from anywhere. And it also accelerates workflows jammed by signature delays, close modules faster because you can send documents online to your customers and get their signatures. And also you can enhance collaboration across your departments, your vendors, and also your field workers and mobile workers if you have them in your organization. And also it's proven compliance with a lot of international regulatory standards. So if you are planning to open up a business in the US, this is very, very important. And Alfresco Cosine also lets you sign a lot of documents at the same time, which is also useful in archiving a lot of documents. So it manages paperless contracts and say invoices as well to accelerate work processes, and it makes archiving easier. And it also reduces dependence on IT because you don't need to have a separate software installed because it's on the web, on the cloud. And the main thing is that it saves a lot of cost and time of printing, scanning, and copying so that organizations can realize the true benefit of having the paperless concept. So this presentation is more business focused. So I suggest that you go and search for this presentation on SlideShare, which has the technical aspects covered in it about cosine, Alfresco Cosine. And also there is a live webinar at this link where you can also Google and find out. It has a webinar, the actual demonstration of Alfresco Cosine. And also you can talk to me after the session ends, after 7:30. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the session.
Next, we have a talk on the cloud computing. Again, this is titled Building High Availability, Highly Scalable and highly available cloud infrastructure. And as more and more organizations move into the cloud and the need to, as the content and users go unlimited, again, this building a highly scalable and available infrastructure becomes a necessity. So we're going to have Manoj Fernando, who's going to talk to us about how to do this on Amazon EC2 Cloud.
So, any of you who doesn't have Facebook or a LinkedIn account in this room? No? You have, right? How do you know it's high available or not? Any guesses? How do you experience that? It doesn't go down, exactly. LinkedIn went down, by the way, about a couple of weeks ago. So, in that sense, I guess there's no need for me to basically explain what high availability is. So, what is important is, why is it important to us in today's context? Even the slightest hiccup or downtime of your server infrastructure can be have a devastating effect. I mean, needless to say, even LinkedIn, I mean, that gives a very negative impression for anybody who's used to it and who wants to keep in touch with the business community. And the problem is not very often that software architects, system architects think about the high availability aspect when they define their systems. It comes pretty much later on in my honest view. But I think the focus is now shifting that they tend to dig deep and understand why high availability has to be considered when the software is architecture. And often, I guess most of you might think that downtime really means that it's something bad happening to the system. That's the normal perception. That downtime means that the server crashes, it becomes slow, etc., etc. But in reality, there are two sides for the downtime. That is, it can be scheduled event. That is, if we take off the system for installing patches, upgrading, etc. And obviously, unscheduled events, which is known to us, that the server crashes. So irrespective of why it goes down, the key is that part of it might go down, but it has to be available to the users, and it has to be transparent, and the user should not see that the system is being taken down for some maintenance. So, what do we need to consider when designing a system of such nature? I'll be talking a bit on the cloud there, obviously, because high availability is tightly bound to cloud these days, but doesn't have to be. If you are rich enough to run your own infrastructure in-house, so many servers, you can do that. But in the current context, a lot of people opt to use Amazon services, a lot of cloud providers, but Amazon I think is the most provider for most of you. And when you're designing a cloud environment, it's important that you realize that not everything has to be clustered. You have some key server components, right? You need to make sure that those components are in fact clustered so that it is highly available for the users. You need to obviously put in considerations such as security. Needless to say that it's not your server room anymore. You can't go to your server room, open the door and do anything with the server. It's going to be somewhere in the cloud, and obviously that means that you need to have access to it, and you need to make sure that you lock down your services, apply all the password policies, and log everything. Because combined with what Renuka was talking about earlier, log stash, you should be able to see what's going on in the real time. Because the reality is that unless you have a sophisticated support team like we have, you're not going to be weaving the log files forever. And also you need to take into considerations such as system audits and change approval procedures. And also the third point is when you design a cloud environment, it's quite important that you size it correctly, hardware as well as software. What happens is we tend to go for the maximum available capacities, but that's not to be done because it's obviously these cloud providers charge you based on the utilization, the bandwidth, etc., the resources. So it's really important that you understand, okay, what is my growth is going to be for a particular server, particular hardware, particular system, etc. And basically define your system based on those estimates that you make. And also identify single points of failure. Like I said, all the critical components need to be identified, make sure that they're highly available. And obviously, one key aspect I would want to point out is the designing of your storage. Because most of the solutions or the deployments fail at the point of you not tackling your data storage properly. Specifically when it comes to your content stores in the world of Alfresco or your database. And also the deployment should be a continuous process. Now, how is that possible? Say that you have a situation that one of your virtual machines go down, won't boot up anymore, and you obviously have a very short time to react. Unless you have it clearly defined like we do, size it. We have what we call a schedule of events. From top to bottom, we have all the instructions written. Unless you have that in place, you will have to rely on something like it either to restore the VM from a snapshot, or to go and use something like Puppet, which is automated deployment mechanism, which will go and execute all the instructions for you. So the system can be up in no time. And obviously make sure that you put all the testing practices in place at the time of designing, at the time of deploying, even at the time of production, by having a replicated environment so that you can basically go and test for defects without hindering anything on the production environment. For those of you not seeing what Amazon EC2, I thought of putting this small review. Basically, all these cloud providers have a certain way of letting the administrators interact with the initial systems, because not always will have fully configured systems in place. So you will have a lot of flexibility in terms of configuring, picking your resources, the hardware configuration, the bandwidth, the load balancing, all that is in one place, and the firewalls, etc. In this case, you see that. So that the idea is the system admins will go and create that initial environment, and then beyond that point, go and configure your applications, like in our case, Alfresco and all the surrounding setups. Now, benefits wise, now I refer to Amazon because this is like the most familiar to you, but most providers do have similar features or services. Amazon provides things like scalable storage, Amazon S3 and Elastic Block Services. They provide the relational database services which are already clustered, so you don't need to go and set up all your clustering, etc. You just consume that service. And things like simple queue service, if you want to write or use a message queue on your application. And elastic load balancing, and even monitoring tools like CloudWatch. Otherwise, which you would require to spend maybe money on setting up your own monitoring tools, if it does well. And also the pay-as-you-go payment option. So basically, they have a variety of packages. I don't know has anybody seen what those packages are? It's a bit difficult to understand initially, honestly. But if you go in detail and then see the categories, the type of features there, it becomes clearer. And pre-configured VMs. You don't need to insert any CDs to anywhere you can't. You obviously have to rely on a certain configuration that is there, or maybe start with a fresh installation of a VM. And it also provides things like snapshots. Take a VM snapshot, clone it, reconfigure your network interfaces, bring it up again, it works. And backup and restore as well. So this is like a typical architecture we have usually provide to our clients. I've simplified it immensely that all the key critical components have in each of the clusters it has 2 servers in VMs. So starting with this, we obviously have the firewall which front-ends all the requests coming in, goes to a load balancer, and the load balancer will point it to 2 alfresco nodes. It can be 2 or many. And the alfresco node will obviously have to access the content store. So the content store is made available to the alfresco through an FSHA cluster, which is exposed to a virtual IP, what you see on the blue box. So any of these 2 nodes going down will have no impact to the alfresco at all. It will be automatically switched to the IP through the DRDB engine as well as heartbeat, which detects the availability of the node. And then obviously you have MySQL cluster. In a typical scenario, you would want to have a high availability cluster, but depending on certain scenarios, you might want to opt for failover as well. You have both options there. And then you have the non-crucial services such as the SMTP, web proxy monitoring. When I say not crucial, they do matter. But no server will go down if, for example, the web proxy is not available. The web proxy is basically used for any traffic that needs to go out from alfresco, not for any customer requests, client requests. How do we do this? How do we ensure high availability? This form of ensuring is prevention. So we have a dedicated support staff, support team, running periodic inspections of the logs and statistics. And we have detection mechanism. We have things like Nagios, the monitoring tools in place. They obviously send periodic updates as well as any failures to any other nodes. And in case of a failure or a downtime, if everything goes down, obviously if the whole Amazon cloud crashes, then obviously we'll have to rely on a DR mechanism. But assume that one alfresco node goes down. What we do is we basically take that off from the load balancer so that the users will continue to get served from the other node. The other node will compensate for it. And then what we do is we do the typical diagnosis, troubleshooting part of it. At times we might have to do some extensive investigations. Once we fix it and run the test on it, we bring it back and put it back to the load balancer. So for customers, it never looks like the server went down. We use the same scenario or the same pattern for applying service patches, etc. So right now we are maintaining real high availability numbers in the range of 99.8% or so of all our deployments. Just few references. You can obviously talk to me later on. Thank you very much.
We are almost down to the last one. Actually, it is the last one. So quick notice. So we've given everybody a feedback form. So this forum is about learning, sharing knowledge on open source, content management, cloud computing, and so on. So please do write down what are the future topics you'd like to see at this forum. If anyone of you volunteer to speak here, that's great too. We'll coordinate that with the next session. Also, if any organizations want to be sponsored, that's fantastic too. So please fill your forms, make sure you hand it in on the way out, and we'll take your feedback and incorporate that into our future sessions. Right, so next we have the Aingaran Pillai, who's going to talk to us about semantic web. Aingaran is also the founder and CEO of Daisy.
Thanks, everyone. So, well, I'm going to talk about semantic enrichment within ECM systems. So, as you heard today, what everyone's been presenting was about how we're managing content, whether it's documents, electronic documents, paper documents that become electronic, web content management using Drupal. But effectively, what we're doing, basically using Alfresco as one of our core platforms, is basically creating lots and lots of content. So the way our customers use Alfresco is, they've got various applications that use Alfresco as a repository. So they've got invoices, documents, contracts that are generated and stored in Alfresco. They're replacing their shared drives with Alfresco. So everything, all documents is versioned. So rather than having it on a shared drive where, if you could delete a document and you won't be able to get hold of it. So it's all going into shared drive. They're using it for web content management. And as Harshini mentioned, they're using it from their mobile devices. They're also using it from email. So it's the volume of content that our customers are generating, and I guess the world, or all companies, is just going through the roof. This is a stat from EMC, VMware, that talks about the growth of content in terms of storage, and it's just going to get bigger and bigger. We're generating lots of log files, lots of documents, lots of video and images, and it's just going to explode. And we've got to work out how, as organizations, we've got to store it and manage it and handle it. Interesting part of this content growth is about 80% of this is unstructured. So we have a whole bunch of content in databases, organized nice and cleanly. We know what it is, all the fields. But there's a whole bunch of other stuff. It could be video content, music, sound files, documents, just Word documents, PDFs, Excel, all completely unstructured. Email as well, all completely unstructured, stored within an organization. And it's just growing. And it's becoming a big problem for large organizations. So when AIM, which is the content management organization, professional organization, they did research, one of the biggest consequence of these proliferation, and I'm not going to read through everything, but some of the key areas that they found was the inability for organizations to use their content. So, it happens to us all the time. We have a new employee starts, and the first day they log in, okay, where do I find out how to do this? Or, how to do something, and then say, okay, we have an intranet page. But then something else will be in, how do I book leave? Oh, that's in some other document on the shared drive. And what if it's I've got a new project that I need to do a brief for, or I have a sales meeting and I need to produce a sales document. And have we done any similar projects like that where I can cut and paste it or use it before I go into this meeting? And how do they find that? A lot of that knowledge is lost in unstructured documents for large organizations. And if we could come up with a solution that does this, these are the things that they've identified. Is basically, they said it'll improve efficiency and it'll help a lot of organizations save a lot of costs by improving their business process, also compliance and risk. So there's a lot of advantages if we can solve it, right? And as I mentioned, alfresco is one of the biggest culprits because it is cloud scalable, as Manoj said. So a lot of organizations are previously, a lot of the financial services industry that we work with, as Martin mentioned, they will have every ECM system. So they will have a SharePoint installation for one department, they will have Documentum for another, they will have IBM FileNet for another. And each of them will have various systems. But what we're seeing with them is now they're standardizing on alfresco as a single platform, because alfresco is quite cloud scalable, and you can scale the various components. So you can build a global platform that scales either on Amazon or also within a private cloud using OpenStack or any of the other cloud technologies. And so they're putting more and more content in, and how do we look for the content, and how do we improve process. And keyword search is broken, especially within the organization. On the web, we know everything is hyperlinked to everything else. So you search for the word Barack Obama, you know that if there's a web page and it's got 20 different links pointing to it saying, this is an article of Barack Obama, it'll come up, Google ranks it, it works well. But within the organization, everyone works with Word documents. There's a Word document there, there's a spreadsheet there, they put it in a folder. There's no hyperlinking. And so all you've got to search on is keywords. And the problem with keywords is, you'll have either too many results. So for example, if you search for the word orange, in the UK there's a phone company called Orange Mobile. So are you searching for Orange Mobile, or are you searching for the color orange, or are you searching for the fruit? So how do you find that? What are you searching for? And keyword search is not. And even the best search engines, it will try and match, give you back the results organized by hierarchy. And if you've got 1,000 documents and it gives you back the top 5%, that's a small set of results you can quickly scan through and decide which is good for you. But if you've got millions and millions of documents, it's a huge problem to scan through. And obviously, if you can solve this, again, as I mentioned, there's more stats on how it'll improve end user productivity. So this is one of the solutions, and this is what Martin referred to when we were, a lot of the stuff that we do is, one part of what we do is R&D. So one of the things that we've been R&Ding as part of a research project to do with the European Union. So the European Union provides funding for organizations to take part in research with universities. So we've been working with some of the universities in Europe as part of the research funding, and now we've kind of got a open source framework, and I'll talk about it, that solves this problem in a very interesting way. So let me talk you through how this works. So here we've got a piece of text. It could be on your website or in a Word document, and it talks about the New York Knicks football game, the basketball team, and it's talking about the Atlantic Division. So if you have a piece of text now, if you search for, and you can search for any of these texts using a search engine, but using semantic enrichment, what we could do is we could extract and identify the objects within the sentence. So we can identify the New York Knicks as the New York Knicks. We could pull out Atlantic Division because that's the league they play in, and also the Eastern Conference. So we can clearly identify objects. It could be names of people, places, organizations, events from unstructured text. And what we've done in this case is we've linked them to DBpedia. So has everyone heard of Wikipedia? Yeah, everyone. So DBpedia is basically Wikipedia in machine readable format. So it's in RDF format that's machine readable. So you can download it and you can parse it. So what we've effectively done here is using our semantic engine, we can identify names of organization places within the text, but then also use DBpedia as a reference and link it to DBpedia. So we've linked to the DBpedia entry for New York Knicks. We've linked to the Atlantic Division and all of these entities. So we now have an additional source of information for our search. Here's the original text. Here's some additional sources of information that we can pull in. So if you actually go to the DBpedia entry for New York Knicks, you've got this machine readable format. I mean, this is just a bit of the page, but you've got a machine readable format that talks about, gives you a brief description about New York Knicks. It's got some stats, it's got an image, and it's got a whole bunch of other information further down. It's got how many games they've won, which years they won, who they competed with, and it's got all of that information. So now, not only do we have the keyword next, we can have all of this additional information. Now, if we can pull all of this information, put it into our search engine, and index it within our ECM repository, we can do some pretty interesting queries. We can search across this data as well as the data within our ECM repository. And DBpedia is just one example of a source of information. There's a big movement going around the world. It's called the Link Open Data Cloud movement. So DBpedia, for example, is right here. This is the one in the middle. So that's the machine-readable format of Wikipedia. A lot of other government organizations, especially, and other organizations, what they're doing is they're publishing all of their data as public data, as using the RDF, semantic RDF format, and they're making it available on the internet. And what they're also doing is they're linking whenever, say, for example, the UK government has a big, lots of data that they publish, but whenever they reference a piece of item, what they do is, if it exists in DBpedia or Wikipedia, they link to that reference as Wikipedia. And so what you're getting is all of these various data sets that people are publishing are being referenced to each other. So what they're doing is they're not creating a separate Wikipedia entry. So if anyone talks about New York Knicks, they point to the New York Knicks entry in Wikipedia. And because all of the data point, what they have is a unique global reference for New York Knicks. So all of these different data sets, whenever they talk about New York Knicks, they use the DBpedia URL for New York Knicks. So that means what you have is the concept New York Knicks, the basketball team, as a globally referenceable unique URL. And so do all of these other data sets. And governments are actively, especially within Europe and the US, they're actively encouraged to publish all of their data in a machine-readable format. And so people are publishing more and more information. And there's a really nice graphic, which I haven't got here, shows over the years how many data sets have been published. And this is from last year, and there's lots more data sets that are publicly available. So what you have is, if you pull that data set in, and here's an example of the RDF data model that we can build using our semantic engine, is to then, you have the information sports, you've got a whole bunch of metadata, you've got, people, places, and organizations, and all of a sudden you've got this rich spider web of data, which is almost how like the internet works, is all of a sudden from a single document with a piece of unstructured text, you've gone to this powerful linked data information, which you can pull in, store it within your ECM repository, or any ECM repository for that matter, and then store it. And then if you push that into your search engine, you can do some pretty interesting search. So if you remember that text where it was talking about the New York, it was talking about the Knicks winning the Eastern Division, and it didn't even mention the word basketball in any of that text, right? So if you had that text and you searched for the word basketball, you wouldn't have found that piece of text. But now, because you've linked to all of that information from New York Knicks, you can search for things and say, give me everything that's got to do with basketball. And it'll find it, because you've taken that unstructured text and you pull in the linked data cloud. The exciting thing, well, yeah, I'll come back to you about the way this is really exciting, but this is quite powerful, as you can see. So you're taking organizational information and you're enriching it with World Wide Web data out there. Search is a very basic example. You can imagine that there's a lot of other use cases that we can do for these things. So what we're seeing and what we're doing with our customers is saying, if you have data, publish it as your own linked data, and you might want to publish it on your website or at a URL. So what we're seeing is a lot of companies like Volkswagen, what they're doing is they're publishing all of their stocks, like their second-hand cars in Germany, they're publishing it as linked data. So all of their dealers can suck that information. They're publishing things like specs and all of that information as linked data, so that dealers can use it. And you can also publish it internally, for different departments can share data with each other. And so things like you can have your Active Directory published as linked data within your organization. So if you have a piece of unstructured data, you can almost use Active Directory as your data source and say, oh, whenever there's a mention of someone in a document, you automatically link to their Active Directory entry within your organization. And imagine if you have your customer relationship data, for example, or reference data. Large organizations, what they tend to do is have a master database of all their metadata, so which is what they call their reference data system. And so you can publish that reference data system quite successfully. And one of the things that Miraj showed was about Drupal and using UberCart to publish your catalog. So there's a lot of online e-commerce sites, and everyone's trying to get high visibility on search engines. So pretty much everyone uses Google search to find out, and then you go and compare prices on multiple sites. And Google, Yahoo, and all of these guys are now publishing what they use called rich snippets. So they're getting organizations to tag all of their data with RDFA, which is a basically cut down version of RDF. So you need to tag all your content and publish it so it appears quite nicely in Google search. To manually publish it and tag your content will take a long time. But using the same technology, so where we have the semantic capabilities, but we have all let's say we have our catalog, internal catalog. Whenever someone writes a piece of article on our Drupal site, we can automatically look at our catalog and automatically link the content. So let's say we had a Drupal site and a catalog we're selling shoes. So to make sure that we appear high on Google ranking and stuff, so we might have an author who's creating lots of articles about what's the latest trend in shoes and all of that. They don't know what's in our product catalog. And so when they're writing content, you want them to link to, buy this shoe, buy that shoe. Using this technology, we could just automatically let them link it, right? So all they're doing is creating lots of articles, and the system automatically links it against our automatic product catalog and tags it with RDFA. So then all the author needs to do is create the content, hit publish, the system automatically links it to our content. And you don't have to manually tag it. Because for small sites, it's okay, you can manually tag your content, but if you look at people like the BBC, for example, they have so many different websites and so much content, it's impossible for the authors to decide how to tag the content. So you can use your internal repositories as well as the World Wide Web data to link your data, right? And the benefits it obviously brings, as I mentioned, is the New York Knicks will have a unique reference on the internet. So if you tag your content and say this is about New York Knicks, the basketball team, and you put your RDFA tags around your content and you publish it, Google will know you're talking about New York Knicks, and there's about nothing else. It's also interoperable across domains and applications, so you can then almost start seeing how you could start sharing data with your customers and your partners. So currently, we have to do custom integrations, but if you're all talking about the same kind of data and the same idea, you can then start sharing using the linked data cloud to share, automate business processes as well. And it solves a lot of these problems as well. So, I've got a demo which I can show. I'm not going to have time to show it, but I can show you a demo where we do things like, you search for orange, and the system says which orange do you want. Do you mean the fruit, the color, or the county in California? And you select, and it only gives you back the content that matches that as well. And the other interesting thing, and maybe what we see a lot in Europe, and it might be interesting to see, is multilingual search. Because once you've linked, you've got New York Knicks is a bad example, but say if you've got orange, and then you've got, here's the link, the French version, here's the English word. What you can then do is, whenever you search for text, you can almost pull across text from various languages as well. So you can do multilingual search. So you don't need to know what the other, what your partners or your colleagues at another office have tagged the content. Maybe the English is their first language and they think in a different way and they tag it differently. So it improves that as well. And so summary of the semantic ECM, and whether it's applied to Fresco, WordPress, or Drupal, or any ECM system, is basically it takes unstructured text and it can automatically structure and annotate the text. You can extract knowledge, because all of a sudden it's gone from a simple piece of text to a valuable piece of text with lots of links and information. Then you start building that linked graph. So your content is now linked, and you've got this whole rich hierarchy of graphs. And then it comes back to how Bhajeeya was talking about content visualization, because now your content is very linked. You can build some pretty interesting navigation tools to find and discover content that was previously might have been in a folder structure, or maybe it just would have one category classification, but now you have some interesting ways of navigating and discovering content. And it has the semantic search, integrating with linked data cloud as well. And once you've got this rich piece of information, then you can start doing things like recommendations. And the most famous recommendation, things like what Amazon does, people who bought this also bought this, and you might be interested. And what it's using, the Amazon algorithms and all the recommendation algorithms uses factors, key points that it would recommend against. Now, because you've got this whole linked data cloud, you've got a lot more rich information that you can use for doing recommendations. So I've talked about the semantic platform and the semantic ECM, and so if you've got an ECM product, let's say WordPress, Drupal, and you're working on an ECM product, how do you build these same capabilities, or how do you start building this functionality into your own solutions? So what we've got is the research project I was involved with. It's open source, all of the frameworks that was involved. So we've got Apache Stanbull, which is basically our semantic enrichment engine. It's currently I think it's graduated as an Apache project now. So it provides content enrichment and interlinking. So it will link to, it will take unstructured data, it will enrich it, and link it to the open data cloud. Apache Momota is the linked data publishing. So what it does is it caches all of the public linked data clouds so that Apache Stanbull has a data source to enrich the data again. So this has a lot of, uses a lot of natural language processing to pick up, to turn unstructured text into names and entities. And Apache Momota then obviously has all the linked data cloud. It caches it locally, but it also, if you have a database of information or your product catalog, you can use Apache Momota to publish your linked data. And then once you've got your content enriched, you can quickly push it to Solar, and then you use Solar for providing your semantic search. So these are the key open source projects that are involved, that are the key components. And Apache Momota is currently incubating, and we're hoping it will graduate as well. So, and one of the other startups I'm involved in is called RedLink. RedLink is a media framework. It's basically what it's doing is taking all these three components, packaging it up into a single nice-to-use solution, and it's available as a cloud service. So you've got two options. You can, one, download these products, install it, set it up yourself, and build solutions on top of it. Or you could use the linked data cloud. It's currently in beta, and it'll, with invited developers only. So if you're interested in using it, let me know. But this will be available as a cloud service. So you don't have to worry about installing any of this. You just use the cloud service on a developer account, and then it's on a freemium model. So at the moment we're testing. So that provides that single cloud service, which provides all of these services. And so Stanbull, it has all of these additional capabilities. What it has is it's got a pipeline, and it's got a lot of configurable things that it does. So you can detect languages. So most of the Western European languages are already built. So if you're interested in building some of the Eastern Asian languages, so that would be good. It will detect topics and concepts within the unstructured data, and then it will link to any data set you might have, whether it's public linked data cloud or private premium data sets. So things like, things that it does out of the box is things like names of people, organizations, and things like that. And Apache Momota is the linked data publishing framework, so it'll bring all of the data sets together. If you have DBpedia, if your servers, within your infrastructure, it has to go to DBpedia. Apache Momota provides a local cached version. And it'll also help you publish your own linked data cloud. And obviously, Solar everyone's familiar with. It provides the full text, faceted search, e-discovery as well, process. So these are all open source projects which you can download and start using.